Hey guys, it's Kira, and today I thought I would talk you through all of the books that I'm hoping to read in spring, so obviously through March, April and May. Now I don't usually set myself out TBRs because I often wouldn't stick to them and I just am more of a mood reader and just see what I fancy at any particular time. However, I'm trying to be a little bit stricter with myself in terms of what I buy and sort of working through the TBR and sort of books I already have on my shelves. And so I thought I might start out by giving myself some seasonal TBRs, because that way I don't have to set out every single book that I'm going to read in a month or anything like that. I can just pick maybe, I think I've got 10 books or maybe 11 books I'm hoping to read throughout spring, and obviously I'll probably read more than 11 books through spring, but if I at least get through these ones as well as any other ones I fancy picking up, then hopefully I'll be making a good dent in my TBR, not buying too many new books but also giving myself a little bit of freedom to read other stuff that I want to read. So as I said, I've set out about 11 books that I'm hoping to read in spring, and I'm really looking forward to getting to some of them because some of them are quite new additions to my TBR and other ones are ones that have been on there for quite a while. But my bookshelves are now so full and quite messy, so I'm kind of setting out these TBRs just so that I can actually keep track of the books I own and really want to read without them sort of getting lost in and amongst all of the other books on my shelves, because we don't have that much bookshelf room and we have a lot of books, so it's a little bit difficult to keep track. But yeah, without further ado, I'm just going to sit down with my cup of tea and talk to you about the books I'm hoping to read in the next few months. So the first few books on this TBR are actually very, very different from anything I would normally read, and that is because at the end of March I'm going to be starting my yoga teacher training, which I'm so excited about. Honestly, cannot wait to get started. I feel like I've been waiting for this for ages now, but there are a few books I've been given on a reading list for that which I need to read to prepare for the training, and there's also another one that was recommended to me by a friend who is a yoga teacher. So I'm obviously not really sure too much about these books because I haven't picked them up because they've got a particularly exciting summary, or I'm really looking forward to the story, or I love the author, or anything like that. They are kind of more functional, educational books, and so I don't really know too much about them, but I am excited to start them because they do of course coincide with starting this journey of becoming a yoga teacher, which I'm super excited about. So those books are The 4 Chapters on Freedom, which is a book which I believe is about the sort of philosophical and historical background of yoga, which is something that I don't really know a huge amount about because my yoga practice has always been a little bit more focused on the sort of physical asana side of yoga rather than the philosophical side. So I am looking forward to learning more about that throughout the teacher training, and this book will obviously be a really good place to start. Then on the other side of it, we've also got The Key Muscles of Yoga, which is very, very focused on the physical side of yoga and anatomy, which is going to be interesting because I haven't really looked sort of deep into anatomy on this level since like biology GCSE, so it's been quite a while since I actually studied anything to do with anatomy, but I'm looking forward to learning more about it and having that as a really good foundation for sort of practicing and teaching yoga, so that should be an interesting one. And then the final one is one that was recommended to me by a friend, Ella, who is a yoga teacher, and she recommended this one, which is Teaching Yoga Beyond the Poses, which I thought would be really interesting because of course when you're thinking about yoga, whether you're going to a class or you're teaching it, you obviously are focused on the flow and the movements and postures that you're going to be doing, but you don't necessarily think about all the other things. And I often find that some of my favourite classes are ones where the teachers combine the really exciting and well put together flow with a really good sort of underpinning theme for the class, and I think that is what this book sort of delves into, so that'll be really good for when I eventually start teaching yoga as well. So moving more onto my usual style of reading and the books that I'm actually just reading because they sound like really good books. The first one I'm hoping to read is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Now this is a book that I've spoken about in several TBRs. It was in my Classics Community TBR for 2020, which I filmed like a couple of months ago now, and of those books this is one of the ones I'm most excited to read because I've had it on my shelves since my birthday last year, and it just sounds like a really interesting premise about a woman who is sort of pointed out in society, in Puritan society in like 16th century America, for being an adulteress and having a child outside of wedlock. And so it's a really, really interesting story which focuses on the morals of Puritan society, which sounds really interesting. I'm also looking forward to reading it because I haven't really delved too far into American classics yet, and I feel like this one will be a great one to get started on, so hopefully I'm really going to enjoy this one and I'm hoping to get to it soon. Next up we have Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, which is a book that has always intrigued me. As soon as I heard the premise of this book, I knew I would be reading it at some point, but because my current TBR has always been so big, I haven't actually let myself buy it until recently. But now that it's on my shelves, I'm really excited to get started on this one, and hopefully also in the other books in this trilogy, of course, because I'm hoping I'll enjoy this one so much that I'll want to get to the following books almost straight away. But this book basically follows a girl called Stevie who goes to a school called Ellingham Academy, and Ellingham is a kind of unusual school which has people who are the very best at their particular sort of specialist area. So for Stevie, that is being a detective, and she comes to Ellingham to try and sort of solve a historical mystery of kidnap and I believe murder that took place years and years ago for the founder of the school's daughter and wife, I think. So basically Stevie comes along to try and solve this mystery, but once she gets there, a copycat criminal comes along and starts sort of doing very similar things to what happened when the original crime occurred, and so Stevie then has to try and solve a current crime as well as this historical case. So it sounds like a very layered sort of murder mystery type book, and I believe it also has a dual timeline where you've got the past and the present going on, so it sounds super complex, super interesting, and I cannot wait to delve into this mystery. And then carrying on with the theme of mystery, we also have The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which is obviously a dark academic book, which is probably like a cult classic. So many people love this book, and honestly I don't know too much about it other than that it is so well loved by so many people. But it is a dark academia book, and I really want to read more dark academia, because basically books set in like fancy colleges with these dark mysterious characters and mysteries and murders and things like that, like who doesn't want to read books about that? Sounds so compelling and interesting. So obviously this is one of the most well-known and well-loved books of that genre, so I'm really looking forward to reading it. It's set in an elite New England college, and I believe there's like this sort of club of very elite people run by a professor, and that just sounds really intriguing, and I can't wait to get into it and hopefully find it a new favourite. So next up we have A Feast for Crows by George R.R. Martin, which is officially the 4th book in the Song of Ice and Fire series, although to me it will feel like the 5th, because in the UK at least, the 3rd book in the series, A Storm of Swords, is split into 2 books, so that it already feels like I've read 4, but technically this is officially the 4th one. Don't know why it got split into 2 parts, maybe because it was insanely large, but anyway, this is the 4th book in the series, and I'm really looking forward to delving back into the world of Westeros and all things Game of Thrones, because it's been so long since I finished the 2nd part of A Storm of Swords. I think I read that at the end of summer last year, and I was really loving the series, but I obviously had a few other books that I wanted to get to, and mainly I stopped picking up these books because they're so chunky, and I wanted to make sure that I finished my Goodreads reading goal for last year, so once it got to autumn, I was focused on reading shorter books to make sure I read my goals. But now, of course, we are in the 1st season of a new year, and so that means that I can read some bigger books again, which is amazing because I can continue on with my journey with the A Song of Ice and Fire series, and I'm really looking forward to getting back into it, because from what I remember, it was getting very interesting when I last finished up with A Storm of Swords, so I can't wait to delve back in and see where the action takes us. Next up we have A House on the Strand by Daphne du Maurier, which I don't want to sort of like overemphasize what I think about this book, but it does sound like the most intriguing du Maurier premise I've read so far, because it basically focuses on this character who starts taking some kind of drugs, and when he takes these drugs he is transported from his present day into a 13th century world, and he becomes kind of obsessed with this world and therefore keeps taking these drugs in order to keep going back there. But then gradually he starts to kind of remove himself from his real life because he's so obsessed with being in this 13th century place that he can't really stand to be in the real world anymore. And this sounds so interesting. Obviously, as we all know, Daphne du Maurier does dark books so well, and all of her books are so atmospheric and so dark, but I'm yet to read one of her books which seems to delve into the sort of paranormal, maybe, in the way that this book seems to do, in sort of exploring the concept of like time and sort of space dimension travel and that type of thing, which sounds very intriguing. And whether or not it actually really delves into that subject as if it's real, or whether it's more the effects of hallucination as a result of the drugs this character is taking, I'm not entirely sure which way it's going to go yet, but either way I think it's going to be an extremely interesting story. Now, I'm not sure it's going to knock my favourite du Maurier book off of its sort of pedestal epistle because Jamaica Inn is such an incredible story and I love it so much, but I do think this sounds like such an interesting concept, and I'm really, really looking forward to reading it and seeing what it's actually all about. And obviously every single book that I've read by Daphne du Maurier has been amazing, so whether or not it actually makes my top spot doesn't really matter because I know I'm really going to enjoy it. So my next pick is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Now, I picked up this book with all the intentions of reading it last year, straight after I finished reading Circe in the summertime, but then sort of everything else got in the way and I just didn't end up picking it up, but I do really, really want to read this one. Now, when it comes to this book, and in reality any book about sort of Greek mythology, I know very, very little going in. I didn't really know too much about Circe at all, other than the fact that it was such a popular book, but I went into it, read it, absolutely loved it, and just found it to be so interesting, and I really loved that first introduction into the world of Greek mythology. Now, since then, I've read nothing else about Greek mythology, but I do find the concept of myths and those types of sort of societies in these like ancient civilizations so interesting, and so I'm really looking forward to reading this one, particularly because I already know I love Madeline Miller's writing style, and so I think her books are a perfect introduction into the world of Greek mythology for people like me who really don't know too much about it at all. So next up we have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, which is of course one of the most hyped up books from BookTube last year. Everyone was talking about this book, and I was actually gifted this one by Jacqueline from Weeby Bookin for Christmas last year, so I was super excited to receive that one, and I cannot wait to read it because it just was so hyped up. Although I am going into this with some trepidation because the only other Leigh Bardugo book that I've read was Six of Crows, and that was also a very hyped up book which everyone seems to love, but for me I just did not vibe with that story. I just didn't love the characters or the world that it was set in, and I just wasn't really interested in that sort of fantasy world. It just didn't really do it for me, and I know it's a lot of people's sort of favourite fantasy series, especially along with the sort of Grisha trilogy as well, but for me I just didn't really find myself being very pulled into that world. However, it wasn't necessarily an issue with her writing style that I found, it was just that I wasn't really interested in those characters as such, and I just didn't really vibe well with that particular story. And so when this book came out, I found out that it was very different style of book, and this one actually fits more into the dark academia style of story than into fantasy. And so for that reason I was very interested to try and read some more of Leigh Bardugo's books, because like I said, I didn't have any issue with her writing style, I just didn't love the world that she'd built up. And so with this one I'll obviously have a chance to sort of enjoy her writing in a very, very different setting, and so for that reason I'm really excited to read this one and hopefully really enjoy it and find myself loving her writing style, because who knows, maybe if I love this one I might be able to go back to some of her other books that I maybe hadn't really been fancying reading after reading Six of Crows and really enjoy them ones as well. So a lot of hopes put on this book. So the final book that I'm hoping to read on this spring TBR is Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney, which I'm really looking forward to reading, hopefully very, very soon, because I read Normal People last month, I think it was in January, and I loved that book an incredible amount. It was so lovely and I really, really loved Sally Rooney's writing style. I now cannot wait for the BBC and Hulu adaptation to be released on BBC iPlayer, because I am so excited to see Normal People brought to life on screen. But in the meantime I can of course enjoy more of Sally Rooney through her debut novel, which is of course Conversations with Friends, and I really cannot wait to read this one because I'm sure if it's anything like Normal People I will enjoy this one just as much. Now, similarly to Normal People, this book seems to be about two characters, Francis and Bobby, who were at one point in a relationship and are now still best friends, and it obviously seems to navigate the complexities of the relationship and the sort of line between sort of romantic relationship and a relationship that is purely friendship, and that sounds to me very, very similar to the sort of complexities that are explored in a relationship between Marianne and Connell in Normal People. And I found that that relationship and the complexity that was explored within it of these two people who are sort of inextricably drawn to one another but don't quite know whether or not they should be in a romantic relationship or should just make it a platonic thing is really, really interesting, and I loved the way that that was explored, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting a similar experience, but of course with different characters in this book. So I'm hoping it will be a really, really lovely reading experience. And I found that in Normal People, Sally Rooney really delved into some quite dark topics, but really sort of focused on friendship a lot and sort of the importance of having strong and stable relationships in your life, whether they are friendships or relationships that are romantic, and just sort of that importance of stability in people's lives and how important that can be and how life-changing it can be to have those relationships. And so I'm hoping that she will again do something similar in this book. And yeah, I feel like what I'm sounding like is I'm hoping to basically have Normal People 2.0. That's not necessarily the case. I do want it to be a different story, but I loved the way that she managed to explore those themes within Normal People. And one of the things that I found so incredible was that, like Normal People, this book is quite short, but I found that the way that characters were developed and the storylines that were explored felt like they had been given so much depth that I didn't really notice how short the book was, and it felt like it was a lot longer in a good way. And so I feel like I'm really excited to get that again and have a really lovely reading experience, because I just loved her writing style so much, and I'm looking forward to reading this one as well. So those are 11 books that I'm hoping to read this spring. Obviously, as I said at the beginning of the video, I don't think those are going to be the only books that I read in this season, but I'm hoping to make sure that I definitely tick those off my TBR, as well as picking up some other books that I probably fancy as the months go by. But I'm hoping to definitely tick these books off my TBR, and honestly, I'm really excited to read all of them because they all sound so interesting, and I feel like I've ticked off quite a few different sort of genres and styles of writing, so really no matter what I'm fancying, I should be able to find something within this pile that I'm going to really enjoy. So let me know in the comments below if you've set yourself out a TBR for this season, or if you like to just go in and be a total mood reader. And also, if you've read any of these books, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.